So yesterday we were looking at the routes. So today we'll continue with the routes. Day 8, 29th September 2020. So we'll be doing more about routes in React. So yesterday we created 3 routes. For example, home, about, and contact. Let's see how they look. So we have the home page, about page, and contact page. If I go to about page, I can see the about page, contact page, and home page. Now, someone asked me that if I click home page, I should see some content here in the home page. So that we will do that task now. So let's try to achieve that task. So when we want to do 2 routes, that is, one route is the home, and if I go to the home page and if I want to click the home page, I want to call home to somewhere here inside in this home page. So for that, I have to move this home page at the bottom line, because if we want to include 2 routes, we need to remove the exact path, because if we put exact, then no other route will match to this route. So once we remove the exact one, so when user will go to /page, they will reach to the home page, and in the home page, I have to create another route for home to, or whatever component you have to call on this page, and here I'll say home to. So when you go to home page with the slash, and when you go to home to with the /home, this part will be visible because we are going to the slash path, and this path will be visible because we put the home to here and we are calling the home to in the URL. So whenever the home to will be there in the URL, we will call this route and display the content in this route. So if I go now, if I refresh it, so okay, so in the home.js, home to is not defined. So there is error coming. Since I'm calling home to here, I have to call home to component also here. I will say import home to from home to. And now let's see how it looks. Okay, now still one more error is there on the home page. Okay, I'm calling link here. Link should be there. Okay, now let's see how it looks. Taking a lot of time. Okay, so now I'm on the home page. I'm on about and contact page. When I click home page, I'm able to see home to, because in the URL I'm passing home to, and home to is kind of child of home page. That is, slash is the home page, and home to is the child of the home page. So when I click home page, I'm redirecting to home to, and home to content is visible here. And that is how we achieved kind of nested component. One route is pointing me to home. When I go to home page, I create another route of home 2, and when home 2 is in the URL, then we display the content of home 2. So this is how we do the nesting of the routes. That is, in the one page we call another route, and from another page we call another route. So this is one way of the achieving the routes. Now there are few more ways which we can use to do the routing. So for example, instead of putting any component here, I will say route, and I will give the path, which path I want to match. For example, I want to match with test, and then I will give the exact, that is exactly it should match to the test. And then I will also, instead of the component, instead of using the component, I have to use, I can use render. Render is nothing but arrow function, and then I'll close this route, and inside the render function we get some props. Let's call this props right now as P, but or we can say matching props. You can rename it to anything, whatever you want. So we get some props, and here I will say return, and inside the return I will say something like div tag hello world. So when I go to the test URL, instead of calling a component, I will just call this text hello world, and I'll display this hello world to the user. So for example, if I go to test, so I'm going to the same layout, and I'm displaying hello world here in between. So now let's maybe in the nav, let's create one link to test, and I'll create one more link for test 2, which I will build now. So now we have already seen how to call the test. You can rename anything, but for testing purpose I give test, and instead of the component I'm using the render, and I'm calling the some HTML text. Let's create another route, and I'll give the path equal to test2, and then I will say exact, and in the render I will write an arrow function, and inside arrow function I will return something, and here I will say matching props. You can rename it to anything. And now instead of this HTML text, I will pass the component, for example about component. So I will pass about component, and I also have to pass this matching props. I also have to pass this matching props. In the curly bracket I'll say dot 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 matching props. So about component will be called when I go to test2, and all the props which are needed or which are really passed in the component by default by application is passed using this matching props property. What are the default props passing to this component? I'll tell you in a bit. But consider there are some props which are passed by applications which we get in this parameter. So we have to pass this parameter to this about component using the spread operator like this. Now if I refresh it, so if I go to test, it will go to hello world. If I go to test2, it is going to about page. Now, how we created home page, about page, contact page? We created these three by calling the components like this 1, 2, and 3. But how we call the test one? We call the test one by using the render property and simple HTML text. And we also call test2 by render property and wrapping the component inside this render property. So I can directly call the component here, or I can create a render and call the component like this here. So both are similar. Either if you want to use render, you can use this render one, or if you want component directly, you can call component directly like this. So both are same. Now what are the props which are passed to the about page or contact page? Let's go to the contact page and see what are the props coming here by default. So now let's see what are the props coming. I go to the developer tools. So when I go to contact page, you will see these are the props which are called by the React when we use this routing. So one of them is match. Match is saying if exact is true or not. What is the URL? This URL. What is the path? This path. What are the parameters? We can see what are the parameters in a bit. We get the parameters here. If we want to pass some parameters in the URL, which we can get it here in the param. We have the location. Location is also saying the contact, and we have the history. This is the some object created by React Router DOM to help us to do some functionality like push, go back, go forward. Some kind of functionality we can use using the history property. So this is how we get the props here. So when we use this render one, this props has to be passed forcefully using this command, using this props, using like this props. We are passing all the props using this way. So this is how we call the route using the render method. Now let me remove these props. Let's go to the browser. Yesterday we saw the destructuring. One more concept of destructuring which we have to see is this. Let's say there's constant foo and it is an object and it has variable called as name of John. Okay, sorry, I should not put semicolon here. So it has the variable John. Now I want to use the destructuring for this object. So I will create constant name equal to who. So when I use this statement, the name from the John will be created as a separate variable, and then I can do console.log of name to see the John like this. Now I'll say console.log of name, which is John. So name is John. Sorry, name is John. Now let's create another object. Constant bar equal to, and here I will give the name of, let's say, mango. Now again I'll do same thing. Constant of name equal to bar. Now again if I enter it and if I print the name will be mango. But instead of using this name, I want to use some custom different name. So let's say I want to use full name. So now what I'm doing, though I'm taking name part from this bar object, but I'm renaming it to full name. So when I do console.log of full name, I will be able to see mango, not the name. So let's click enter. And now if I do full name, I see mango. Because now I'm reassigning the name to full name. And I'm using full name here. So if we sometime we want to rename what is coming in object, we can rename like this way. A better example for this is if I use, let's say, constant bars equal to, and here I'll create an object. Object will be, let's say, fizz buzz equal to true. Some value is true. So I created an object, but I created the key which is not the normal letters. It has the dash in between. And I click enter. Now, if I want to do the destructuring of this, I can use this constant equal to, let's say, bus. Now here, if I do like this, fizz bus, like this, because I want to take this fizz bus, so I'm doing fizz bus here and trying to fetch from this object, and I click enter. You will see I'm getting error because it is trying to get this and trying to make the JavaScript variable of this, but this is not the real JavaScript variable. It is not the, it has this minus sign, which is not the valid JavaScript variable. So in this case, we have to rename this to something which makes sense. For example, I'll say constant fizz buzz, and then I will rename it to fizz buzz, which is normal variable, which is valid variable, and I will say equal to pass. And then if I click enter, then it runs fine. Now, though I'm taking fizz buzz from this buzz, but I am renaming it to fizz buzz. So now if I type fizz buzz, I'm getting true value, which is coming this. So there are many ways, many cases where we don't need the variable which is coming in this format. We need to rename it. So we will use this variable, but we will rename it to fizz buzz or whatever name we want to assign. So this is the one thing which we did not did yesterday, and we are doing this now. And this will be useful in the route which I will be showing you now. So now let's go to the routing page again. So now let's say if I have two pages, okay, so I will be creating two pages, new file, page 1.jsx, and another one is page 2.jsx. Now I'll create the page 1.jsx. Here this is page 1, and I will also create page 2. Here this is page 2. So now if I can call page 2 in page 1 like this. For example, I'll say import page 2 from page 2, and then I can call page 2 like this. So what I did, I call the page 1, then I call the page 2. So when I include the page 2, so page 2 is included in page 1. It doesn't mean that page 1 is the parent of page 2, because page 2 can be included in n number of components. So it is not 100% right to say that page 2 is the child of page 1, because we are not really dealing with the inheritance in object-oriented JavaScript or object-oriented programming language where we have parent and child. This is something we are including page 2 inside the page 1. So you can call it parent-child, but it's not the 100% right relationship. But it is something that page 2 is included in the page 1. That's what it means. Now let's run this page 1 and see how the page 2 looks here. So if I go to nav, let me add one more link, page 1. So here I'll say page 1. Okay, now I'll create the route also for page 1. Let me create the route for page 1. It got closed. So I created a route for page 1. Now if I go to page 1, I will be redirecting to page 1. Okay, page 1 is not defined. Okay, so I created the page 1, but I did not define this page 1 in the page. So import page 1 from components, pages, page 1. Okay, so we are in the page 1. Now we are in the contact page. Let's go to page 1. So I can see page 1 and page 2. Why I'm seeing both? Because here I created the page 1 and then I created the page 2 here. So what if instead of page 2 as a self-closing tag, I write something here, blah, blah, blah. Now if I go to this page, still I see page 2. But what happened to this blah, blah, blah? What if I want to show this blah, blah, blah also on the page? Right now, I'm not showing blah, blah, blah on the page. I'm showing on the page 2 because I am calling the component page 2 here. But I want to show blah, blah, blah also in this page, in the page 2. So how can I achieve that? So I will go to page 2, and if I want to see props for the page 2, what props are coming, I will do console.log of props. So let's see what props are coming for page 2. Okay, so we have object. You will see there's a children prop which is coming and it has the word blah blah blah. So if we want to display blah blah blah, I can use like this. I will say props dot children, and then if I refresh the page, you will see blah 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 is coming. So blah 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 is not on page 2. It is inside the page 1, inside the page 2 tag. So anytime we want to call something in between, I can pass it in the page 2 or any component inside that, and I can retrieve that with page 2. This is one thing which we need to understand. Another concept which we want to understand is this. Let's remove this children. Children part is done. If I want to use something in between the tag, I'll use children. Now, if I go to page 1, let me remove this children part. Let's say if I want to pass some variables to that page 2, I can write that variable here like var1 equal to, let's say I'll say apple, var2 equal to banana. So I created two variables. I want to pass that in page 2. So I created these two variables. Now if I go to page 2 and I want to see what are the props coming, I will see like this. So here I see I am getting var1 apple and var2 banana. So in page 2 I am getting these two variables, and from where it is coming? It is coming from page 1. So from page 1 we can pass n number of variables which we want to use in page 2 from page 1. Right now I'm hard coding these values, but in real world these all are dynamic, which will be captured from the user and will be passed to different components. That's how it works. Now in the routing we need to see two more things which we will do tomorrow based on the concepts which I have explained today, because without these concepts you won't be able to understand those two things. One more concept I want to explain is this. Let's say I have a page 3. One more concept, it has small concept. I will just explain in short. So I have page 3 .jsx, and here I will pass the props. I will say console.log page 3 props, and here I'll say page 3. Okay, so now I'll call page 3 from page 2. I'll say import page 3 from page 3. Now what if I want to pass all these variables which are coming from page 1 to page 2, and I want to pass all these variables to page 3. So what are the different ways to pass those variables to page 3? So right now if I open page 1, I can see page 2 and page 3, and these are the variables coming on page 2. But I want to pass all these variables to page 3 also. Right now page 3 is not getting any props, it is a simple object. So how to pass all the variables which are coming? One way is I can say var1 equal to props.var1, because var1 is coming in the props of this page. I can also say var2 equal to props.var2, and then these two variables will go to page 3. Let's check this. So now you are seeing this is the variable coming from page 1 to page 2, and these are the variables coming from page 3 to page 2 to page 3. But what if there are hundreds of variables which are coming? I will not write all the hundreds of variables here. So instead of writing hundreds of variables, I will just say dot props. That means all the props which are coming from the page 1 should be passed to page 3. Now if I do refresh, okay, wait 1 second. So now what are the variables coming from the page 1? It is automatically passed to page 3 with the statement which I wrote here as dot props. That is, all the props which are coming from the page 1 should be passed to page 3 automatically. But what if I want to, let's say var1 is apple, but I don't want on page 3, I want var1 to be some different one, watermelon. So I can override variable by pushing var1 equal to watermelon. So though from the page 1 it is coming as apple, but when it goes to page 3 it will become watermelon. So you will see here it is coming apple, and on page 3 it is going as watermelon. What if you put this var1 before the props? Then it will not overwrite, because initially it is var1, it is overwritten by the props. So var1 will be apple only, it will be not watermelon. So now you will see it is apple, not watermelon, because we wrote this before the props, which is not the right way. We have to write this after the props to overwrite it. So this is how we transfer the variable from one page to another page, and this will be useful in the routing part, which we will do tomorrow. And those two routing parts are this one. One of them is layouts. That means for few pages I want to show different layout. Header is different and footer is different. So that is the one concept which we have to do in the layout part. Another concept we have to do is private routes. Private routes means if someone is logged in, we want to show one page, but if he is not logged in and if he tries to go to particular URL, we will redirect him to login page so that he can log in. Though the login functionality we haven't done it and we don't have it, but we'll just redirect the user to login component with some text. But when we go to the real project, we will make the login functionality, and then it will work in real world situation. But right now we will only show what is the purpose of the routing part, how to create the private routes and how to create the layouts in the routing. So that we will do tomorrow, these two things. That is all for today. If you have any question, you can ask.